both find their spot, and that was like, it's pretty intense. I liked it. Anyway, hello, I'm Bailey Schomburg. This is what I would say. This is my brilliant co-curator, Lizzie Peterson, but she is under the weather tonight, so my other half cannot be here. But I can say that we are truly honored to be stepping into our roles as co-curators of the Observable Readings Poetry Series. Our goal is to maintain and continue to grow the integrity, warmth, range, and love that this series has brought to our city for 20 seasons. So, welcome to the kickoff event of Observable's 21st season. We are so grateful you're here. So, some light housekeeping. Restrooms are around the corner in the back. There's a cash bar. Please tip your bartender. There is not a photographer here tonight, right? No? Okay. And there are books for sale via Left Bank Books on the table to my left, to your right, most likely. All right. And I have some thank yous. We want to thank our funders, Missouri Arts Council, Regional Arts Council, and the St. Louis Poetry Center board and members, of course. And we also want to thank our partners, the Hilo, Transburg Arts Foundation, and Left Bank Books. I would also like to extend a more personal thank you to Dana Levin and Aaron Quick for leading the way, holding our hands when needed, and showing enthusiasm and endless support for the direction in which we hope to take this. It's really special. So now I will introduce our first reader of the night, Travis Mossotti. Ready? All right. Travis Mossotti's 3 previous collections are as follows: About the Dead, Field Study, and Narcissus Americana. His 4th collection, Race Car Jesus, won the Christopher Smart Joan Alice Poetry Prize. Mossotti's 5th collection, Apocryphal Genesis, won the Alma Book Award through Saturnalia Books, and he recently won the 2023 Wales Poetry Award. He currently serves as a Biodiversity Fellow for the Living Earth Collaborative at Washington University. He lives and works in St. Louis. Aside from being a book-titled genius, Travis Mossotti's work winds and wanders without ever losing its way. The shifts and turns, both narrative and lyrical, are pointed and rich with discovery and imagination. These poems are firmly planted on the ground while their hands are reaching up to the sky. I admire Mossotti's poetics, and I admire his dedication to poetry community, to extending the hand of our strange, beautiful art to anyone who may want it and to all who need it. Please help me welcome Travis Mossotti.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Bailey, and I'm so grateful that you two, and Lizzie and Absentia, are running the helm. I mean, you're doing great. And thanks to the St. Louis Poetry Center for having us here tonight and running this series for 21 years. Thanks to all y'all. You heard the thunder. I heard the thunder. I was saying something. For braving the weather and coming out tonight, and thank you, Niki, for flying in to spend the evening with us and share the stage with me. So there's this working class ethos that I've struggled with most of my life, and it essentially espouses the idea that our contributions to this mortal plane can be measured by the time and energy we spend in pursuit of something important to us. My father used to drive this home to me as a kid, usually in relation to sports. He was a Big 8 champion swimmer for Mizzou, captain of the swim team all 4 years. He knew what it took to win. And he always used to tell me, if you want to win at something, you got to be willing to wake up earlier than the competition. Meaning, to my young self, that if I wanted something in life, I was going to have to want it real hard. I was thinking about him, and I was listening to an interview with Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who has a similar ethic, work ethic, and she has this quote from a Longfellow poem, a stanza, that she's kept posted in every office, and she was sharing this in the interview, and I was like, oh shit, she likes poetry. All right, cool. All right, Longfellow, okay, all right, whatever. Oh, I feel so bad about that one, but yeah. So anyway, she's kept this in every office, and including now in the Supreme Court. And the poem, the stanza that she has, the heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward in the night. So it was awesome hearing a Supreme Court Justice recite poetry in an interview and say that it had, profound impact on who they were as a person. But it also reminded me of how exhausted I am sometimes from toiling upward in the night, night after night after night. And the poems that I'm going to share with you tonight from Race Car and Apocryphal, they tap into that in one way or the other. The first poem I'm going to start with is dedicated to David Kluhl, my former mentor, longtime St. Louisan, but let's be honest, he's one of the great poets to hail from the state of New Jersey. If we could have convinced him to eat St. Louis style pizza, I think we could have claimed him, but his tastes were too good for us. So I support his decision too. Anyway, this was the last poem of mine that he ever provided any critical feedback on before he passed away. And it's in both of the books over there, actually. It's called Ecclesiastes. This girl at my daughter's school said her family lives in a mansion. And now my daughter says so too. As we cut through the rich side of town and drive past homes with tennis courts and heated stony grottos that waterfall into mosaic tiled pools, inspired by the ones in Santorini, no doubt. And statues of angels that rise from the center of the pools and blast trumpets, water tumbling down like a musical note only the wealthy can hear. Her family must be blessed, I say, even though I know the girl lives in Shrewsbury, where there are no mansions to speak of, only bad debt and potholes and troubled parishes and racism. And yet, our house, which is not in Shrewsbury, must seem tinier each day to my daughter. She's not old enough yet to be embarrassed by the clawfoot tub and moldy vanity and giant hunk of underlayment and linoleum I ripped out from the bathroom, set on the porch because of mold. Smelled it like another emergency loan from the credit union. Thank God we had a deep enough porch to store the junk while we figured out how to finance the job with me providing the labor, and it's a wonder I'm still not drinking. I'm saying that our bathroom has decorated our front porch since February, and it's spring now. And Cora is getting older by the minute and must see porches that aren't warped and leaning and weeping the contents of the house. I'm trying to tell you that I'm writing this poem while contemplating a tub in front of me that's turned on its side, like one of those sad whales that's washed up on the beach with 50 pounds of plastic in their bellies. I'm trying to say that I wear a sports jacket to work because I've worn through the elbows on my shirts. People at work think I'm putting on airs, but I'm actually just cheap and desperate for something in my life not to wear out. The jacket was my father's, and each time I slide it on, I feel him, but how the fuck did we end up talking about me? Let's get back to the mansion my house is not, and the daughter growing taller and wiser by the minute, and the truck I'll need to borrow to get that tub off my front porch while the bathroom's in disrepair, and the crocuses have come and gone, and now daffodils, and soon enough the naked ladies and mulberries and blackberries. And there was a moment when I was young, when I thought money was the salve one spreads on the wound of poverty. And so my friend and I drove up to a mansion we admired and knocked on the door to ask the owner what they did for a living. Nobody answered. Middle of the day, the two of us skipping school to get high and trespass. Maybe there's a lesson I'm missing that's buried somewhere in these words, and I should probably just try and remember how to pray or go read the Bible. But a freight train's cutting through this two-sided town, and the porch is vibrating underfoot, and the train is so loud, I'd be foolish not to hear it. Yeah, David cut the last two lines of that poem. It's a secret between he and I. You guys don't get to know them. They were bad. Totally undercut it. This next poem I'm going to share is dedicated to the memory of Evan Boland, who originally published it in Poetry Ireland Review. This poem is like super fascinated with the absurdities that we encounter throughout life, and that they buy for our headspace and our attention constantly. It also is fascinated with what our younger selves, like our 16-year-old selves, would think about us standing up here. I don't think mine would be particularly pleased. I don't know what they would think. This one is called Wine Fridge. A wine fridge, used gently, free for pickup on Craigslist. It rests there because, quite simply, capitalism requires that such novelties accrue. When the middle class suffers a glut of bonus income come February, and I don't know how much cheap wine fits inside, but Kendall Jackson comes to mind as the only bulk white I can recall from the country club where I used to work banquets at 16 so I could afford to hashtag, "Hey Mr. Beer," and gun it across the county line and disappear for what it was worth into another bonfire where I must have said at least a dozen times, "Fuck this penguin outfit," or "Fuck those rich ass motherfuckers," or "Pass me a smoke, I got a light." Still, that fridge will never cross my lawn, let alone front door threshold, the same way my 16-year-old self will never give up chain smoking or believing in the beautiful death, or staring bewilderedly out from inside my body's bones at what I kept of him shelved in a plastic bin on the unfinished side of the basement. A few pictures in a journal, maybe a soccer trophy. His disappointment will just have to get in line with the rest of me, because old age crushes boutonnieres into the shape of a wine fridge. Fucking fridge designed to keep wine at less than room temperature. I hate wine. And yet here it is, smack dab in the middle of my poem, which is just what I need. One more absurd, impossible thing I have somehow been charged with getting rid of. Thank you. This next poem, I've got two more. This next poem you're gonna sense a theme. I'm dedicating poems to people who've died. This is dedicated to the memory of John Burnside, who actually hosted me at University of St. Andrews for book launch for Race Car Jesus last October, and who passed away in May. When I had finished the reading at St. Andrews, John asked for me to read one more poem. You know, like I'd done the Q&A, I thought we were gonna go out and get something to eat. And he's like, "Can you do one more poem?" And he asked for this poem. So I'm gonna read it. This poem is like, all I can describe it as is it's juggling flaming knives while trying to contemplate the impermanence of everything in the universe. That's the closest I could get. It's called Lunch with My Spiritual Advisor at Tiffany's Diner. My advisor says we must learn to do nothing, according to Merton, to take possession of our being here, where the world hits fever pitches daily with gas prices plummeting further into the asthenosphere over which Oklahoma is shifting seismically, and the continent ties the climate change rate to refresh rates compounded by global averages calculated by the EPA, WHO, who knows, but they affect loans even on the hovels and the hills of Kentucky, hills that Merton once climbed down from to see what was becoming of cities mutinied by advertmen clad with bourbon grins and gin martinis, while the little doves tending easy-bake ovens with mittens, the kitten licking his genitals on the lounger or ottoman, which is all that remains of an entire empire, footstools. I mean, what becomes of us humans? If that can happen to an entire empire, I ask my spiritual advisor, who doesn't know he's my spiritual advisor, but who is a Princeton Divinity School grad nonetheless, and who gave me Merton's essays and said we should discuss God at our next meeting. And yes, at the center of my being is nothingness, or everythingness, crammed into a speck that fits upon the head of a nail, driven into a stud and spackled over with joint compound, sanded, then primed and painted to match curtains and throw pillows, inspired by French countryside chateaus that nobody within 200 miles of this diner has encountered outside of Pottery Barn catalogs, mailed for free or emailed to dummy address inboxes that fill and fill and fill and will never be emptied or closed. And work is calling, so I put up a finger to indicate 1 minute to my advisor. Then this poem is calling my wife, a woman who dreams in blue, wife who says that even sleep is no escape from the new season of The Walking Dead, starting tonight, which is Valentine's Day, day to honor the Roman saint who Claudius had beaten, stoned, and decapitated, according to the Christian Broadcast Network, whose website advertises trips to Israel, the Holy Land, a place my wife once traveled to the day after I proposed, and in a market in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv. Who can remember such details? She witnessed a grown man masturbating in a 3,000-year-old stairwell, circumcised in public in a way I'll never fully envision or understand, praising perhaps the god of sexual frustration, the god of cheap trinkets for tourists, the god we can't erase from collective memory and can't bury or beat or stone to death with Grecian marble, unearthed and laid with fortified thinset on my bathroom floor at $10 a square foot, which was a fucking steal, grouted with DeLorean gray, because I love the name more than platinum gray. It had nothing to do with color. And when I hang up with work, I want my advisor to tell me that God is just who we are when we're alone. And I want him to weep with me before the check comes expeditiously, although speed has less to do with space-time and more to do with perception, to be at a fixed vantage and say with relative certainty that an object is moving quickly or is moving with blinding grace as my advisor leans in and kisses me on the cheek or draws a cross on my forehead and tells me I'm one of the good ones, one of the blessed few with the ear of the Godhead, and that whatever crosses my lips is holy, crosses my mind is holy, crosses the infernal white of this page is holy. And that if I quiet myself long enough, that if I look hard enough, I'll see as I'd always suspected. The gate of heaven is everywhere. Thank you. That's one sentence poem that sucks. It sucks to read. It's so hard. Yeah, but he asked it, and then he died, and so I memorized it for him. So this last poem is a little Hollywood overlap. So my brother lives in Los Angeles, and this is dedicated to a cab driver in Los Angeles. And I used to get out to see him like 3 or 5 times a year, and now it's down to like 2, if I'm lucky, sometimes 1. But this cab driver is potentially not dead. The only one I'm dedicating tonight, he's probably still alive, out there somewhere. And aptly titled for this evening, thanks again for everybody showing up. This poem is titled One More. The small talk invariably dies in the dark silence of the cab. As the cabbie from whereabouts unknown sighs, then runs his fingers across the back of his neck to say without words that one more red light, that one more shift scuttling to and fro, that one more month turning metered miles into rent money for some shitty box apartment, that one more year aging hard in Los Angeles, this basin of wildfire smoke and drought and cheerful little airbrush billboard songbirds who refuse to grow up, Lord in heaven. There is a moment in each of our lives where we become painfully aware of how far we have left to go. And all we can do is brace ourselves on a railing at the bottom of a flight of stairs that leads to a bedroom into which we can collapse. The sigh is the most honest expression a body can offer because it is involuntary. The body simply becomes a wealth of ache, and the mind agrees. Green light. Lone kestrel perched on a wire. Child with curly hair skipping across San Vicente. Hollywood grows as dark as any other place on the planet in predictable intervals, and this driver and I have more in common than we'll ever know or admit to. So now I sing of him before he's forgotten, before he's added to the catalog of human sorrow I touch and withdraw from. The sorrow about which I know almost nothing. The sorrow of days twisted in the churn of engine fire, with one hand gripped to the wheel, adrift in an ocean of wheels. The sorrow of taillights spinning off into space like twin red stars at the center of a galaxy that will one day reach a penultimate moment and then sigh and collapse and give itself over to the waiting dark. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Travis. When you came up, I was like, okay, notebook in hand. He's gonna recite these poems from memory. I truly forgot how to spell my name the other day, so I'm really impressed. I'm gonna introduce Niki Hurd, and I'm not gonna go into her whole bio. You can ask her if you want. Niki's most recent book, The Stuff of Hollywood, is undeniable. It is cinematic, it is earned, and it exists. It exists yesterday, now, tomorrow, and it exists all at once. I feel that I can feel that Niki fought for these words. for the opportunity to channel and funnel a legacy of numbness and feeling, of acceptance and resistance. It's real as hell. And after meeting Niki for the first time in a cemetery years ago and eating dinner next to her last night, I can confidently say that she too is real as hell. As are the best of the poets we cherished yesterday, now, tomorrow, and all at once. Please help me in welcoming Niki Hurd.
Right, can y'all hear me? Yeah. Awesome. I'm so excited to be here. Back in St. Louis. Okay, so I'm making this difficult. Got a little technology here. So, but while that's getting set up, thank you for that introduction, Bailey. And many thanks to Erin, Dana, Lizzie, Bailey, Jen for the invitation, and big thanks for the supporters out here, many of whom supporters of the Poetry Center that I've met this evening. And I'm really excited to be reading with you, Travis. Oh, here we go. All right. So I spent 3 years in St. Louis. I just moved in July. I was the writer in residence at Wash U. And during my time living here, I had this awesome pharmacy called Millbrook. Maybe y'all know Millbrook. Awesome, awesome people. And then I moved to Lancaster. I think that's the proper way to pronounce it. And I said, oh my God, like I really want to find a locally owned, small, good people kind of pharmacy here. And so I found this place, Smith Gall's Pharmacy. And Millbrook transferred all my medications to Smith Gall's, and I picked up my first medication from them several weeks ago. The woman was just totally wonderful, and I thought, yes, okay. For whatever reasons, when I needed to go ahead and get another prescription, I didn't have, at the moment, their information on hand. And so I had to go to Google and look up Smith Gall's. And during my search, this is what I found. That. So it seems that Smith Gall's has a side business. They sell semi-automatic weapons. This is a little store, literally like 2 streets from the little historic area that I live in. And I was just like, oh my God, these guns are everywhere. But I'm like, okay, maybe this is the wrong Smith Gall's, but I looked up the address and they're both at the same place where I get my medication. So that's my introduction to one of the 5 pieces I'm gonna read tonight. Clap for a nigga with his rapping ass blast, and there's 2 stops left. One to deliver a kind young brother and hers. From the incoming call, cousin, says the voice. Did you hear so-and-so got shot? No, nobody's called. So-and-so caught with a bag of guns last year, 13, should have been home, upset about school, too many chores, not enough time to hang with friends. I'll pray, she says, knowing I'll pray is a goddamn lie. And as cousin extends goodbyes at the top of a brick building, a billboard, two 9mm muzzles in profile facing off as if in conversation. Above the left word thoughts, above the right prayers. And who could make this up? The accommodations to a hotel paid by a foundation located between the pages of some book. She wants to tell somebody quick what's taking place between Jackson and South Jefferson, the research, the call about her relative, so-and-so, the billboard, but now MJ, the Uber driver, self-named after the king of pop, is the only other body in the car as it hurls into the Chicago night. A bobblehead eagle on the dash, American flag stuck in its claw. So I just came from, I flew in yesterday from James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, for the Furious Flower Conference. It is a conference that started in 2004. It's to celebrate Black poetry, and it only happens once every decade. And so I am reading this poem for that conference, for the memory of that conference, and the two women that I met before the reading who live in North County. Near the San Pedro River, north of Mexico, in the backwoods of the desert, a black pig is shot square between its right and left eye. Then a knife is taken to its neck. Call this Afro horror, based on actual events. The way 4 white hands throw a rope over a mesquite limb. The way the beast hangs from its hooves. How they say its blood must drain quickly. Inside a Times Square club 1 week before, for hours, she watched a man, head bald, skin cadaver white, walk in heels, buck naked, a shaft, a sock the color of crimson. Now it's nearly sunset and supper time for the killer of pigs. And to the right of the scene, the body of a vintage Ford truck, driver's side open. And from the steel radio, talking to every Black man in the nation, the voice of Louis Farrakhan. So the stuff of Hollywood is about a number of things. It's about gun culture. It's about the past and present of American racism. It's about my own complicity. And all of this is, or much of it, I should say, is seen through the lens of movies and television. When I started at WashU the fall of 2021, I knew that this book was supposed to have a documentary center, which means that there was supposed to be a good portion of it that was from source texts that were not my own words. I didn't have it at that time. I took my students to the library. I was teaching a modern and contemporary documentary poetics course, and we went to special collections. They had curated some collections so that the students could view them. And during that time, there was this pamphlet that was part of the Black Film Promotional Material Collection. It was not at all part of, let's see, if we can pull this up. The projector's on? Say that again?
Give it a second to fill up.
Okay,
Sorry, I turned it off.
no problem. So anyway, what I found was this pamphlet. You know, the pamphlets, like you go to a concert and there are folks that are passing out pamphlets for the concert or the theater. Well, this was a souvenir from the original screening of The Birth of a Nation. And I freaked out. Because that movie, for those of you who know, yeah, it's a difficult movie to watch for me. So here, after January 6th had happened, here we are, it's fall of 2021. I felt like there was something here. And so what I did is I went to the continuity script of the 1915 film, and I started pulling out language from there. And I connected that language with language from the January 6th hearings. As it turns out, we all thought, I thought, and the librarians thought that this was the actual pamphlet itself in its entirety. But the Smithsonian has the booklet, and this is the actual cover. A picture of the Capitol going up in smoke. And so what I'm reading right now is just an excerpt from this section, the middle section of The Stuff of Hollywood. That is all source text, none of it is my language. Behind the curtain that screens the porch, Elsie is petting a cat. A street with the Camerons' columned house on the right, Margaret and Flora walk down the street toward their mother, who is talking to two women in an open carriage. Margaret leans her parasol against a couch in the hall of the Cameron house. She changes her mind and carries the parasol with her up the double staircase and out of the frame on the left. Elsie breaks into a smile, suppresses a little jump of excitement as she brings her clasped hands to her mouth. Where did you get that hat? In response, Todd makes some comment about Duke's vest, gives him a playful punch and runs off. Dr. Cameron, hearing the commotion outside, starts toward the front door and out right. Begin videotape. There's an individual in a tree, white male, about 6 feet tall, thin build, jeans and a blue jacket. Underneath the jacket, an AR-15. He's with a group, about 5 to 8 others, 2 at the base of the tree, near the porta potties. Wears green fatigues, 5'8", 5'9", skinny white males, Glock-style pistols and waistbands, brown cowboy boots, in videotape. My family is so happy I'm not writing about them. That was the first book. The carriage pulls away at left and Ben puts on his hat and walks toward the Cameron's house. Begin videotape. In the tent behind the stage, he was concerned about the shot, the photograph, because the space wasn't full. He wanted to be full for people to not feel they had come far to watch him. He was angry. We weren't letting people through. I don't effing care that they have weapons. My people not here to hurt me, I overheard a president say. In videotape. Dried corn is portioned out of a skillet with a twig. A soldier asks for more and is given a few more kernels. The soldier distributing the corn moves down the line as others begin to eat. Two men roast their share over an open fire. One of the men roasting his corn tries a kernel prematurely and burns his tongue. The soldier with the skillet moves farther down the line. Begin videotape. A president went to the private dining room. The dining room is connected to the Oval Office by a short hallway from 1:25 until 4 o'clock. On January 6th, in the dining room, the TV on, Fox News. A president sat in his usual spot at the head of the table, television hanging on the wall, all afternoon for more than 2.5 hours. While in the dining room, there is no official record of what a president did. In videotape. Flora adjusts her ermine, walks forward smiling, and exits right. Ben enters right as Flora bursts through the front door. She remarks on his clothing and he on hers as he plucks a piece of cotton wool off her shoulder and rubs it between his fingers. For a long moment, Ben stares directly at the camera. Begin videotape. He's in a tree, in fatigues, Glock-style pistol and waistband. Look for the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, American flag, face mask, weapon on the right, brown cowboy boots. In videotape. Another group of people standing at their windows celebrates the parade with cheers. A woman brings her fist to her heart and closes her eyes and thinks. The man with the wooden leg looks out his window as his daughter and wife holding a baby wave at the parade. The parade continues past Cameron Hall. Ben and Elsie look out to the sea as the breeze blows against their faces. Begin videotape. Through the open door of the Oval Office, a president could hear the sound of the crowd and the music at Freedom Plaza. For the future of this country, we will step off into 1,000 years of darkness, were some of the things they were saying. There at the plaza, just blocks from where a president sat that evening, excited for the next day. In videotape. So the book, that section has several images that are in pairs. When I went back to the movie and rewatched Griffith's Birth of a Nation, there were stills that reminded me of the insurrection. And so on one page, on the left side, you'll see this. And then on the right side, you see that. Very similar. Something that I don't see in poetry often, I see it much more in nonfiction, is, and I definitely don't see it in a lot of social justice or political poetry, is the poet actually looking inward and kind of, there's always this pointing the finger outward at injustices which should be done. But there's not a lot of time taken to point the finger to oneself and to write about the ways in which perhaps they're problematic as well in ways, complicit. And so I'm trying in my writing to call myself out on maybe moments in my life where I've acted like country. If I tell you I want it to be a star, on the good ship Lollipop, Hollywood 5 points on a walk of fame star, what would you say? I once dated a country, kind gentleman he was, walked me to my car, gave his number. The guest inside the rented hall, built on land he stole, danced to vulgar music, stuffed mouths wide with cheap wedding cake. Did I tell you he was dressed to the nines? Did I tell you he was the groom? What does it say about intimacy when metaphor can't get close to the truth? What does it say when you don't want a thing unless it belongs to someone else? I'm a sucker for a bad man, but not because I'm weak. Some nights gazing into his eyes, I saw what looked like the devil. Some nights gazing into his eyes, I swore I saw myself. And I'm going to end with this piece. Towards the end of 2016, Literary Hub put out a call for writers to write against the inauguration of the 45th president. And this is my piece that was published. It has words or phrases that are in brackets, and so I'll just say the word brackets, and that'll be the word that's in there. And thank you so much for coming out, especially in this dreary weather. But I hear that y'all needed rain, so I'm glad you got it. Resist. To overcome the temptation to wallow in brackets, insert word, as it relates to the election of the 45th president of the various states of America. Though there is fear, bewilderment, and anger about that which is moving toward a further strengthening of corporate power and the migration of government toward fascism. Think Sandra Bland, think Rekia Boyd, think Freddie Gray. Inhabiting a Black body was already precarious, but now supporters of the president-elect have unspoken latitude to articulate intolerance, brackets, hate, with impunity. An intolerance that the various states of America were founded upon and with few exceptions continues to be a defining part of the country's identity. And as such, if the office of the president at all reflects the culture of a people, left or right, the historical and more recent proclivities toward mediocrity, brackets, education, and narcissism, brackets, social media, and misogyny, brackets, off the football field too, suggests there should be no surprise the states are left with the lowest common denominator. To overcome the temptation to A, mythologize the past, or B, construe fallacy, or C, fail to admit partiality towards the 44th president of the various states. For the purpose of perspective, one might think of Adichie's warning about the dangers of a single story, which is to say restrictions upon peaceful assembly, brackets, Patriot Act expansion, exists now, and these restrictions will exist tomorrow, and drones circle above in a quest for targets, and they will circle tomorrow as well, albeit to a greater degree. And from this angle, all one has is the courage to articulate truth as it is seen and felt in the written word. One wants to be hopeful for you, dear reader, but hope too, along with everything else, has been co-opted. And this girl has never been good at selling much of anything. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna do a little Q&A. I'm gonna ask a couple of questions of both poets, and then I will open it up to you guys to ask up to 2 or 3 questions. And then after that, poets will sign books. Please buy books. Support the local bookstores, support poets. Okay, I got to sit right in between it. Okay, so my first question is, when it comes to subject matter, you made a comment about your family being happy you're not writing about them. When it comes to subject and theme of a book, do you feel that you have chosen it or it has chosen you? Or is it a combination? Do you want to start?
So I'll speak in the context of the stuff of Hollywood. I did not want to write this book. The book actually just started to be, it started in 2012. It was really only about observing gun violence in America. That's what was it. It had nothing to do with race or anything. But then as time moved on and things were shifting in America, there was no way for me not to write about race. And particularly when the insurrection happened. Black people are always seen as abject. And in watching what was going on that day, I thought, are you really kidding me? Like, we're stereotyped as being so violent, and had that been people of color, you know exactly what would have happened. I felt very much compelled to write about this. I'd rather write something that was maybe funny or lighter, but this is what I had to to do. I didn't want to write it.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow. Glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens, right? Like, I'm working on, so we were traveling in Canada last summer with family, and we're sitting somewhere, where were we? I don't remember where we were. We're sitting outside on a patio eating dinner, and we're sitting there, and we have white plates now, we're sitting waiting for food and stuff, just normal dinner. Little flecks of black just started appearing. Are these dirty? No, they were coming from the sky from fires, of course, because it's just, I mean, we were in the middle of just massive, the biggest wildfires that ever hit Canada, and then that was it for me. I've been working on a book called Wildfire ever since, and yeah, no, I don't want to write that book. It hurts, you know. Those books hurt, and I do. I was lucky to get the material out for those two books that I published, which there's some overlap, by the way. I got like there's poems that mix, because one of them was in the UK, one of them was in the States, and so they let me kind of mix and match some poems. So those were, I won't say a joy to write, but they do track my path to sobriety too, which is a good book to write. Narcissus Americana, those are drunk poems, so not as fun to write.
Thank you both for just such genuine answers. My second question before I open it up to you is, and maybe I'll start with you this time, Travis. What is one thing that poetry has given you?
Oh, it's given me everything. It's that line, nothingness and everythingness crammed into a speck. It's like the subtotal of the universe, you know. When I started writing, when I found poetry or poetry found me, you never know how that works. I was 19 years old and I haven't stopped writing it since. So it gave me something to do before I die. And I do it. The other thing is I was talking, I think with Rita, I was like, it gives me this like, I have to write for my mental stuff. I talk to my therapist. I'm like, hey, when's the last time I've written a poem? That's a problem, you know. I have to write. And it's not that I don't use it as therapy. I use my therapist for therapy, but I do reach a state of mental equilibrium through my poetry. So it gives me that.
Thank you. And Niki, what is one thing that poetry has given you?
I'd say permission to be. And I'd have to say that specifically it came from Black poetry. So I grew up with Whitman and all of the canonical poets, but it wasn't until I came across Lucille Clifton and the work of Ruth Foreman, where I actually heard language the way I grew up. And I wasn't really allowed to write that way when I got my undergraduate degree in creative writing. That was frowned upon. And so it was Black poetry, specifically organizations like Cave Canem, that gave me permission.
Thank you. I'll open it up to 2 or 3 questions. I am gonna ask you to just holler, because I don't want to bring the mic to you, to be completely honest. So just let the voice out. Yes.
My question is for Niki. First of all, thank you guys both for being here tonight. I really enjoyed the subject matter of your first poem. I don't remember the whole thing because it was the first one you read and I'm a little ADD. But, you know, next month will be 6 years since I was shot 3 times in an armed robbery. And what I heard in your poem is something that I have felt in my own life, which is this normalization, this nonchalance that I find myself years later reacting to something that was probably the biggest turning point in my whole life, you know, as a 21-year-old. You know, I carry a weapon because I'm supposed to shoot back, right? I sit at the dinner table and my mom goes, "Oh, it's 6 years next month. That's so glad you're here." You know, your strangers from high school hear about it and thoughts and prayers. You know, I think to your phone, the phone call at the beginning of the poem, and so it resonated with me deeply. I was wondering if you could elaborate some of the motivations behind that poem and some of your perspective, and how you saw that poem. So.
Thanks. So thank you really for sharing your story. And you know, not to sound cliche at all, but like your situation, what happened, is the reason why this book was important to write. The background behind the poem was exactly what you said. I was just watching the normalization of gun violence. And we've been living in this type of culture for some time now. It was 2012, I think, where there was this shift, I think, because that was the year where there were several mass shootings. And that's when I started writing this. And so it was about the normalization, but it was also, I mean, the boy that should be home studying, that's my nephew that was carrying a bag of guns. And I couldn't tell anybody, I'm not close to that side of the family, but I couldn't tell anybody, like his mother was making all kind of excuses for the situation. And, you know, if I am around that side of the family, like I'm in and out because I'm like, you guys are into some stuff I'm not really trying to be around. And so it was to write about the normalization of it. It was also to be complicit in a kind of way to talk about my family and where they're positioned in this. Something that I didn't put in the poem was that the cab driver, I had mentioned why I was there and this research that I was doing, and his response was, "Oh, people only get shot on the south side of Chicago." So the stereotypes around race and guns and all of this. So that was really the impetus for it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question, and thank you, Niki. Yes.
I have a question for either poet or Buddy. Thank you for sharing your work. My question, poet to poet, what do you think the responsibility is for poets right now?
That is such a multi-layered question. I think it's the responsibility of the poet is the same responsibility as every human being to start off with. There's a baseline. I'm in IT, so we call it baseline security. It's like every user in the system has this baseline that you have to hit. But the responsibility right now is to be an advocate, to use your voice for good in this world, and to be able to shine a light on shit that sucks. And that is, I guess I've been steeped in it over the last couple of years because I've been working on a book that's not out yet. But that's what happens, there's a delay, so you're in another world when these books come out. And so I've been steeped in just how fucked our planet is, and just how awful it is. And I'm married to a biologist who works with critically endangered animals, so that adds that other layer of just impetus to this whole thing. But I think whatever your passion is, whatever your whatever calls to you or pulls you out, or you are required to do, to give a voice to the voiceless and to shine a light where it needs to be shined. That's the job of all humans. Poets need to use it as well.
Thank you. While I would like to read more socially engaged poetry, I think the poet's responsibility is to listen to what they're called to write. And that might not be socially engaged work. It might be work that's just focusing on aesthetics, perhaps, you know? I don't feel comfortable telling another writer what they should be writing. Yeah. As much as I sometimes think about it, you know, from time to time with people that I know, I'm like, but I don't feel comfortable with that. That's not the world I want to live in.
Thank you both. One more question. Brave soul. Yes.
All right, what are the next projects?
So yeah, I've been obviously working on this book Wildfire for years now. It feels like it. But beyond that, I can't see. It hasn't presented itself yet. I tend to write just through, I mean, if you didn't pick this up from my reading, I tend to write about what's in view. So whatever I don't know where I'm gonna be in a couple of years, so I'll probably write about it when I'm there, and then I'll figure out what it means. But yeah, I liked your answer better, by the way. Can I recant? I don't think I should tell writers what to write about, but I do think that they should treat whatever they write about with gravity or like some sense of like decorum and like purpose. I guess that's it. Yeah, fuck me. I'm not gonna tell anybody what to write. Because somebody would tell me what to write and be like, fuck y'all. I'm gonna publish a book called Race Car Jesus, bitches. And I did that shit. It took me like 34 times, but found a publisher.
So I'm trying, so my next book, I'm pretty certain will be essays. I'm thinking about, I don't know how I will get these things together. I think it'll be an experimental-ish book of essays. And I'm thinking about silence and the various ways that silence has articulated itself in my life. I'm thinking about being a daughter and the expectations that are placed on women, children, that are not placed on others. Yeah, and I'm not sure how those two will kind of intertwine. I'm thinking actually too about violence. Because this book is one story of violence, but I have other ideas that go beyond race, that go beyond gender, that are just, I'm just, the past few years, I've just been thinking about who we are as people, as humans. And I don't know where that's gonna go, but I'm excited by it, so, yeah.
Thank you both so much. Let's. All right, so I have a few things to say. Again, thank you both so much. I couldn't be happier with how I feel right now. And I'm very grateful for that, and that is you too. I dare you to come back to the next one. And I double dog dare you to bring a friend. Let's see if we can fill up all the chairs, because this is awesome. This is really, really awesome. Poetry community is important. Art community is important. Everyone in this room is involved in some way in making that happen, and it's a big deal. So love yourself for that. Books are on sale. Erin's over at the left bank table with the books, and poets will be signing. Yes. Awesome. You can become a member of the St. Louis Poetry Center. You can sign up for the newsletter at the back table. Something about QR codes are also available yes, Erin has a QR code. So some upcoming events. Next, Poetry at the Point, Kenneth Wave. That's Kenneth. Kenneth curates Poetry at the Point. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's October 22nd at the Focal Point with Matthew Freeman and Murdy. Am I saying that correctly? Riley of the Reborn Reading Series at Fortune Teller. Reading Between the Lines event is part of Banned Books Month. High Noon series on Thursday, September 26th at Hilo. St. Louis Poetry Center board members Ted Mathis and Lizzie Peterson reading banned poems in partnership and conversation with VLAA, Volunteer Lawyers and Accountants. Sunday workshop on October 20th, 1:30 p.m. at the Hilo here. Look out for more details on the writer who will be facilitating. And then, I'm not biased, but in November, we have another Observable reading with Eduardo C. Corral and Steve Schroeder on November 18th, same time, same place. It's gonna be great. Again, I dare you to come back, and I double dog dare you to bring a friend. And I'm very, very grateful that you all came. And I also wanna say thank you for Tech, thank you for being our gracious bartender, and thank you to, what is your name? What is it? Sandy, thank you, Sandy. I didn't thank you last time, and I'm thanking you this time. So, okay, 5 books.